10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What is going on? What is going on? It is week 3. The Bills are coming off another win. If you're unfamiliar, this is the Pressure Front Podcast. I'm your host, JT, with my co-host, Lorenzo Alexander. Zoe, what is going on?
I'm doing good, JT. You know, just out here ripping and running, coaching my sons in some flag football. So it's been good. Good week. Obviously, coming off of a Bills win is always great. You know, Bills Mafia is always jacked up and pumped up. So it's been good to see the boys go out there, play well, and do their thing these first couple of weeks.
Right. 2-0. Josh Allen, a career day on top of a career day now. I mean, this kid is really coming to his own in front of our eyes. And I mean, it is amazing to watch. The defense, we could see where Milano and Edmonds were missed last week, but hey, they did enough to get the W. I expect to rebound this week. But let's hop right into our guy, Josh Allen, this week.
Yeah, he's been doing great. I mean, I think you mentioned two good things. I mean, obviously, he had over 400 yards passing. He had like 4 tugs. He did a great job this week. And the scary part of it, when you go back and watch the film, he still has room to grow. There's still plays out there that I know when he was sitting in that film room, it's like, ooh, I had Beasley on that one. Ooh, I missed John Brown on this one. Ooh, I missed Diggs here. And so there's still some little tiny things that he can continue to clean up that can make him even more explosive. Even after a 400-yard game, he can go and sit there and say, hey, I could have had 500 yards and maybe 5 touchdowns. And so that's the scary thing about this offense, scary thing about him. And I know what he is thinking right now. And that coaching staff, yes, they did great. Yes, he did well. He made some great throws. He had some great presence in the pocket. Some guys came up with some big catches, but they just scratching the surface. They still have more room to grow. He still has the ability to become more accurate, still work through some of his progressions and be able to continue to learn from some of the things that he's seeing and taking what the defense gives him. And so I'm so excited for him, especially having a big week this week. You know, these first 2 weeks, you know, people are not, you know, believing quite yet because of who they played, but they played some good teams. In my mind, Miami always plays as well, but they're going to have a challenge this week, obviously, with this Rams defense led by Aaron Donald. And so I'm excited to see, because this offensive line is playing well too. Think about Cody Ford, think about Big Spain in the middle. They've been throwing some guys around, and so those 2 guys specifically are going to have to make sure that they come this week, eat their Wheaties, whatever they got to do, because they're going to be in a fight all game as far as blocking Aaron Donald, especially at the point of the attack and passing and rushing as well, because he's just all over the place in that. So I'm excited for him. And then as far as the linebackers, and again, you know, I have the privilege of kind of going back and watching these games and kind of having an understanding of what they're doing. Yes, they miss Tremaine. Yes, they miss Matt, because those are guys that have been in that lineup, you know, really for the last 2 or 3 years, and you know what you're going to get. You know they're playmakers. They have a lot of game experience working together. And so some plays that weren't made, maybe get made by those guys, but I still was very impressed by Tyrell Johnson getting his first start. He was all over the place. He was eating, reading screens, coming up, fitting, did some really good things out there. And yes, did he make some plays that Tremaine could have made? Yes. Tremaine would have made that he didn't. Yeah, and more of that had to do with Tremaine's size, which Tyrell he doesn't have. Some of those play actions where you saw they were play action and kind of throwing behind the line. He was just coming up trying to play the run, and they was doing some RPOs and get you in a bind as far as, should I come up? Is it run? Is it pass? Do I need to sit back? And Tremaine does the same exact thing, but because he's 6'4", long, he might be 6'5" for all I know, just long, athletic, and jump tall. Even when he gets sucked up from a play action, he can sometimes jump, put his arms up, and he's still being disruptive. And so those are some of the things that Tyrell, as he continues to play, because he's still going to get some playing time because of what he did. It would be crazy for him not to be in the mix some way, somehow. That he's going to continue to have to learn, you know, reading the offensive line. Are the tackles setting and they're doing a play action pass? And I think as you get more experience, your vision expands a little bit. When you first get out there, you just read your keys. Okay, I want to be right. I don't want to make any mistakes. But as you get more comfortable, your vision expands and you start seeing other keys that give you telltales. And that's where his growth will come as he continues to develop and get more experience. But did a great job, flew around. Obviously, AJ Klein did a good job as well out there, being a vet, being around this defense. And so they held their own. I don't think they still where they're at. Looking at the turnovers, they got to get some turnovers and not give up those big plays, which hurt us a little bit in the passing game. And so they continue to clean those things up, which they will. It's good that they were able to learn in a victory versus having to lose in a loss or learn in a loss.
Well, you know what? You mentioned last week about Ryan Fitzpatrick. You said, be careful with him because in a blink of an eye, he can have 350 yards passing on you. And that's exactly what he had. In a blink of an eye, he had 350 yards passing. And like you alluded to.
Tell me what it looked like. What did it look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was he used the hash marks. So you knew that he was going to use Gesicki a lot, which we spoke on last week. Yep. Mike Gesicki, and being a receiver, I think Gesicki had 8 catches for 130, and he continuously killed us over the middle of the field. Obviously, where Tremaine and Milano would have been floating around. So he knew where to attack as a veteran quarterback. But like I said, going back to Dotson, I thought Dotson played extremely well too. I thought he was great as far as stepping in, and especially stepping into the middle linebacker spot, because maybe I should ask you about this. What is the difference between being a young player and stepping in at an outside linebacker spot to the inside?
Well, the outside position, you don't have to make any checks or calls. You're normally just echoing what the Mike linebacker says. And so you're really just worried about what you have. You don't have to get nobody lined up. You don't have to make sure people understand the call that you're giving them. You don't have to make any checks with if it's empty or maybe a max protection look that they're giving you that you may have game planned that week. You don't have to make the rip and Liz call to set the blitz. You don't really have to make any checks to talk to the safeties on the back end because everything really runs through the mic. He's the quarterback of the defense, literally making it. If he doesn't call it, you play the call. And so when you play an outside linebacker, you don't really have to worry about any of those. Unlike what Tyrell was thrown into. He had to make all those checks. And it's one thing to do it in practice. It's one thing to do it when you get a couple of reps, when Tremaine is going. But it's another thing when you have all week kind of leading up to it, the anxiety, the butterflies. Obviously, he stepped up to the plate, did a very good job. And I'm pretty sure there were some checks and stuff that he missed. But he played well. It didn't affect him. He was still flying around making plays. And he was on special teams, still covering kicks. And people don't realize how hard that is. Traditionally, your Mike linebacker doesn't do it. Tremaine doesn't play special teams because you don't want that guy to be tired running around. But because guys were hurt, not only did Tyrell have to do Tremaine and stepping in that role, he also had to still hold his role up, I believe, just on punt, which is tiring. I mean, you fight a guy for 40 yards, run down, cover a kick, maybe make a tackle, maybe not, but you ran down there, you're tired, and you're on defense now. And now you got to make a call, play well. You may get a long drive, and then maybe it's a 3 and out, and then you're right back on the field. So it's just a lot of things that can happen to you throughout a game that can wear you down as a young player stepping into that role. We have to do special teams and defense. But the biggest difference really from Mike linebacker to Will linebacker is all you're doing is echoing the call that the Mike gives and really just worrying about yourself after that occurs, where a Mike linebacker has to really have his antennas up throughout a whole play, because sometimes, late in the down, a check can happen, and you got to be the one to initiate it, get everybody start moving in that direction.
No, you know what? I thought for just a young player, and this is his first start, actually. It's not like he's ever even started before. This is his first start to be thrown in that situation, to come out and, like you said, he was all across the field. He's making plays in the passing game. He's making plays sideline to sideline. I think going forward, they may even throw his name in the hat for that third linebacker spot.
Yeah, because he's a good player. He's physical. He plays hard. And so, like I said, when a guy goes out there and performs the way he did in his first start, you gain a lot of respect from your players and the coaches, and they start trying to, he out here making plays. The only thing that he didn't do was he had a PBU instead of an INT, which I had to call him. I said, man, what's up with your hands, baby? I thought you had nice hands. But when you're out there making plays and being disruptive, flying around all over the field, coaches tend to try to find ways to get you on the field, or at least now when they're game planning and they going, well, who's going to do this week? Well, we know Tyrell can do it. He stepped in and was a Mike linebacker. So maybe we should use him this week and allow him to still continue to get out there. And so it definitely gives him more value. Just knowing how the coaching staff works, you're going to try to find a way to get some of your better football players out there on the field, even if they're not the starter. But having packages and roles for them where they can get their feet wet, make plays, and add to the team.
Right. I was ecstatic to see this kid play because, obviously he had the off the field problem last year before his rookie year. And as an undrafted free agent, that's probably the most scary thing you could do. I mean, even as a rookie and a drafted rookie, it's a scary sight. But to see him come out there and play, I was ecstatic for him. And hopefully they do get him more playing time. And actually speaking from experience, special teams playing defense, very tough to do. Another key you said last week was getting a running game and establishing a running game against Miami. I thought we saw more of a running game this week with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. I think both of them averaged over four yards to carry, which you can't ask for in your running back. We saw less runs from Josh,
right?
And more passes. So let's speak about Devin Singletary and Zach Moss' performance a little bit and possibly going forward against the Rams this week as well.
Yeah, man, I thought they did a great job, especially Devin. He was downhill, did some really good jobs of, yards after contact, making guys miss, bouncing stuff out to the outside, and this was very active, throughout the entire game. I thought he did a very good job just throughout the day, keeping them honest, keeping the offense balanced. And it really started with that offensive line. I mentioned earlier Spain, Ford, obviously Dion, what he brings, just their tenacity up front, opening up some of those holes and allowing a guy like Devin to really eat the defense up a little bit was very impressive. And that was something that popped out when I watched the game this week. Just them being physical downhill, doing some gap scheme things, really just trying to impose their will up front and just wear those guys down throughout the game. And because of that, I think it opened up some of the other things down the field where they really had to load the box. And, watching Miami, seemed like they had 8 men in the box at all times, a single high safety, and that's where you saw a lot of those crossing routes then come alive off of some of the play action. And he was able to find John Brown. He was able to find Cole Beasley down the field, Diggs down the field with some big explosion plays, and my guy Isaiah McKenzie in there too, making some plays out there, making some plays down the field. So they had some big chunk plays, explosion plays, but it started with that run game and then Miami having to load the box and then them taking advantage of that single high and just really running crossing routes away from the corner's leverages.
With Moss, now he's a rookie, and obviously we know being a rookie, it takes a little bit of time, especially at running back at that position. Sometimes you got to get a feel for game. I mean, Devin was, I thought, a rare case last year where the moment he stepped onto the field, he just felt like he had the feel of the NFL game, the speed, the vision. Yeah. Moss seemed a lot more comfortable from week 2 from week 1.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with preseason, right? Devin had the luxury of having a preseason last year. LaShawn and Frank wasn't going to get a ton of carries. So he got his feet wet in that regard as far as seeing the ball, seeing what it feels like, game speed versus practice speed, actually getting tackled, how fast holes close up, because things happen at a much higher rate in a game versus obviously practice. And he's going to continue to develop and continue to be able to figure out where he's at, because I thought he looked really good in training camp. And so I really want to start seeing some of that thing even translate even more so because he has a lot to give. And so just continue to feel that out, how things work, third downs, all those things, so he can continue to grow his value, his experience, and repertoire, and really just be able to contribute based on his talent, because he has a lot of talent. So I'm excited once he really clicks in his mind, and then you'll really be able to see it explode. Right now, you can still tell that he's a first-year player, Devin's a second-year player when you watch both of them kind of run. But Moss is good, and I'm really happy at his progression and where he's at right now.
Speaking of this offense, Stefon Diggs. Stefon is just not coming to Buffalo and making his mark on this team. I think Stefon is putting his name in the hat for top 5 receiver in the NFL.
He's definitely up there right now. I mean, even when you just look at yards, I mean, he's up there. I mean, the dude is a dog. Just as far as his route running ability, obviously he's very sure-handed. And you know, he had 8 for 153, but and there still was some yardage out there left on the field. And so it's just so hard. You know, it's certain a guy that already had John Brown, Cole Beasley, Dawson Knox. You know, I would even throw Isaiah McKenzie in there because he's starting to come alive. Devin Singletary. Now you and put a true, you know, another number one out here. It's just hard. You can't. I mean, nobody can cover him one-on-one, and nobody can cover John Brown one-on-one. Then you got Cole Beasley in the middle, normally on like the third best corner or linebacker covering him. Nobody can cover him, so it's hard for them to really match up. And so they're gonna have to try and maybe double him, but then it just opens so much else up on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams continue to try to attack this offense. You know, defensively, maybe you try to, you know, speed Josh up and pressure him a little bit more. I think that's another place where maybe he can continue to grow. But it's really hard because he has so many weapons that get open fairly quick.
Right. And another day of spreading the ball around the yard. John Brown, 4 catches, 82 yards, a touchdown, 6 targets. Cole Beasley, 5 receptions, 70 yards, 6 targets. As you said in the week 1 in this show, you're going to have to pick your poison.
Right. You got to pick it. And it doesn't really matter. When all those guys are putting up numbers like that, it's just hard. And so I go, take Diggs away. All right, well, here comes smoke. Run this deep over route that can't nobody else cover, you know, one-on-one, running away from my leverage, and you want me to stop that? Come on now. Cole Beasley, he's on the linebacker, you know, running all these shake routes. You want me to cover that by myself? What? I need help. Well, we can't help you because we helping on Steph. You know what I mean? So, coach, I need help though. Well, I can't give it to you. So you just in a conundrum as a defensive coordinator because unless you have the horses and guys to match up with people that match up really well, and it's few teams that are able to do that consistently across the board, especially at corner, because everybody's trying to find corners that are like that. It's hard. Or you have to have just a superior defensive line where you can drop in coverage and they can get pressure. But while these guys up front are blocking, you really feel like you have to bring 5 to maybe speed Josh up a little bit and maybe force him into a mistake. But even in that, he's moving around, he's being mobile, and he's growing. And so it's just hard. It's just hard to match up. And like I said, and he still has plays out there that he could have easily had 500 yards his last game, going back and watching it. So it's just scary to watch, and I don't know what defensive coordinator is going to try to do to stop him.
Do you think, because this is so much yards, I mean, this is pretty much, Josh has 804 total yards himself in these first 2 games, which is absolutely insane. Do you think that teams are daring him to throw the ball and beat them with it?
I don't. Maybe. I mean, it looked like Miami was doing that because they were stacking the box and it looked like being man on the outside and a single high safety. And look where that got them. You know, 400 yards later, 4 touchdowns later, with a loss. I mean, so go ahead and do it. But with them guys that on the outside that can run, you better just hope he's just inaccurate, or you speed him up and he just overthrows the guy. So right now, people are banking on who Josh was 2 years ago, but he's developed. He's gotten better with his accuracy. Has he made all the throws where he's won them at? No, but he's definitely closed that gap and minimized the ones that he does miss. And if you continue to gamble, he's gotten to the point to where he's going to hit majority of those passes. And so you do not want to bet on yourself when you're dealing with that and putting yourself in a position to give up chunk yardage. And the explosion plays that the Bills had last week, if that happens every single week, they're gonna win 90% of the time. It's just too hard in this league to give up those type of explosion plays. And as a defense, find yourself winning those games when Josh and them, you know, having 7 or 8 explosion plays in a game, running and passing. So they got to figure out a way to stop one or the other. But again, based on the matchup, even if they can't run the ball, it's still so hard to match up with guys. So they can always find somebody who's open out there.
Right. You know, this is 2 games in. In week 1, we felt like they could have scored 40 points.
Yeah.
In week 2, we feel like they could have scored 40 points. And the knock by the experts on this team last year was, could Josh win them a game if the defense was struggling a little bit? In this game, the defense struggled a little bit, obviously, with the outing of Milano and Edmonds. We knew that it wasn't going to be a picture-perfect game for him. Well, that's his 7th career fourth quarter comeback. Ice, water, veins. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big player, and people always want to point to the negative things, but that's what makes him special. He's a young player growing, and in that part of growing, you're going to have growing pains. And so, yeah, is he where he wants to be or where people think he should be quite yet? No, but he's a playmaker. He's going to go out there and compete and win you games, and he's done it. And I have a lot of respect for the way he plays. And, I have to call him and text him, hey, man, hey, I know you can run linebackers over, but just stop it, all right? Just stop it. We want you around until y'all are in the playoffs competing for a Super Bowl, man. Stop running these cats over. Just slide and get down. I get you. We know you can do it, all right, bro? But the way he run guys over, he's a competitor. And those are the type of guys that you like, and he's growing in his skill set too. He's not just a guy out there trying hard. His skill set is developing, and he's an ultra competitor. And so he's getting better and better and better each week. And so you have to respect that. And so you can keep talking about the throws that he's missing and focus on those things. And yes, he can improve, but he still put 400 up. So he's doing something right. You just don't fall into 400 yards in 4 tugs.
No.
And so the guy is back here tossing that ball around because he didn't do that any years prior to that. And he had weapons last year, but he didn't go over 300. So obviously there's been a natural progression. Yes, we've added Diggs, but it's been a progression for him as well as far as getting the ball out, knowing where he wants to go, taking advantage of what the defense is giving to him, and making plays. So let's put respect on this man's name and let's acknowledge that he has grown as a quarterback and as a player in this league since his rookie year. And stop trying to compare him to whatever you want him to look like or whatever your perception is going to be. But the dude is a quarterback. The dude is going to be in this league a long time, and he's going to win a lot of games. And so, now we're just waiting for him, as they're going through this progression, can we get to the next level? He's been to the playoffs. Now he needs to get a playoff win, and hopefully they go more than that this year. But it's 1 week at a time, as I already know how they're thinking. And all they got on their mind right now is the Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, and speaking of the Rams, this is a offensive juggernaut themselves. So, I mean, this is probably the best offensive team the Bills have faced this year. Sean McDermott, Leslie Frazier versus Sean McVay and Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think defensively for us, we just have to be patient because what the Rams do, and this is something, if you can go back to, this might have been Sean's first year, 2017, with the Saints, and you get a lot of these jet motions, tight ends falling back, relays. And that year, I think Drew Brees ran the ball 22 times against us and went just straight down the field. And it's a very similar offense in the sense of trying to get you out of your gap, trying to get you to run lateral, and then the running backs are cutting back. And then off of that, they have play action passes. And so everything looks very similar. And so especially as a linebacker, you have to be patient. You can't just be running. You have to understand where you fit. And knowing that majority of the time you're going to be falling back, but as you fall back as a linebacker, doesn't mean you have to run to the gap because your gap is actually coming to you. And so this week they have to be really patient with their feet in that regard and understanding where they fit. And once they see where they're going to trigger, come downhill, fill the gap. Because when you watch this Rams team, when they run the ball and they have success, guys are just out of their gap because they don't know where to fit, the jet, people's eyes in the wrong place. The linebackers are falling too far back, not falling back, got guys in the same gap. And with any offense with great players, they're going to find that hole. And then off of that, obviously, Jared Goff and Sean McVay have had a great success with the play action game. And so guys are going to really have to be able to read their keys, get a feel of the offensive line. Are they coming off? Is it elephants on the parade, which we say is more of a boot look and it's more of a lateral movement. And so just getting a good feel for that. And I think maybe some of that may be blitzing early and putting people in his face, so you're pulling him up and really getting him off of his tempo and rhythm. Because last week I felt like Goff got a little out of sorts when it wasn't, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. It wasn't very manageable. He got out of sorts. He kind of looked like golf 2019 when he was playing behind the sticks, when things weren't on time, when disruption was going on. He wasn't able to. It didn't look as smooth, and that's what I saw last week. And so the defense has to be very disruptive this week. Getting upfield as a defensive line, being patient as linebackers, figuring out where you're going to fit, and then once you fit it right, come down here and lay some wood and put these guys in some 3rd and longer situations.
I have a question about the travel schedule, because obviously I remember, I think it was 2016 or 2017 when you guys had the West Coast trip.
Ooh.
And it was Seattle, Arizona, San Francisco, or everywhere. It was Seattle, Los Angeles.
That was 2016. We played in LA and in Seattle that year.
Right, and I believe Rex had you guys. Didn't you guys stay out there for the weekend?
Yeah, we went out. I think 2 days before, maybe. We didn't stay out there though. We came back and then went back. I don't think that year was back-to-back weeks on the West Coast. But coaches have different philosophies. Obviously, you have a team like the 49ers this week that are staying on the East Coast because they're playing in the same city potentially twice, the Jets and the Giants back-to-back weeks. You'll have some teams do that, or if they're playing East Coast, maybe they're in Florida, then New York, they may go to Virginia and stay at the Briar, I forgot the name of it, but it's like a resort in Virginia that's set up where they're going to stay there and then fly up the rest of the way. You'll have coaches to go back and forth, just depending on where you're at in the country and where the games are at. So it's different thought processes about it. But I don't think it's back-to-back West Coast trips. So some coaches like to go out 2 days before. We would always, I think under Sean, we went out just 1 day before because there's really the science, and they got with like the Olympic Committee that studies all that, because more of their athletes do that at a higher rate, going to different time zones. And based on the study, 2 days wasn't enough time for your body to adapt to the new time zone. So there really wasn't any reason for you to be out of your bed an extra night away from your family, an extra day away from your surroundings or your routine, an extra day. So based on that information, I know Sean is always elected to just go out Saturday, maybe earlier in the day, Saturday, but go out just the day before and just try to stay on your normal clock, because that was more effective in the long term versus doing a 2-day trip.
Did you ever feel like as a player taking that trip from the West Coast, or because you played with the Raiders, to the East Coast or East Coast to the West Coast, there was any jet lag, any fatigue factor in there?
Yeah, it definitely affects you, and it's definitely harder going west to east because it's like a 10 o'clock game versus going the other way where it just feels like it's just later in the day. And I think because your body is on a certain routine and it's ready to play or not ready to play based on the time of day and how you're traveling, it's definitely a struggle. And so I was always fortunate to be a guy that went from, for the most part, east to west. And anytime I went west, I was going home for the most part. I was in Cali, so I was always up for those games, so getting ready to ball out. But the older I got, the trip back to the East Coast gave me significant issues. I mean, because you're getting back at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit later, depending on how long the flight is and what time your game is. And so it always took me really an extra day, day and a half to recover from that. And that's where the jet lag hits you. After you're exhausted, you're bruised up, you're sore, you're tired, maybe you're lost. And so just emotionally drained, physically drained. And now you got to get on a plane that's going to dehydrate you. You cramped up, food ain't all that. And now you have to fly back 5, 6 hours. Was a significant, took a significant toll on my body, especially as I got older.
So obviously the Rams are traveling East Coast. I have a little bit of a stat here. Sean McVay and Sean McDermott, who I think are two of the youngest minds and best coaches in the NFL, especially for their ages. They've gone against each other twice as coordinator and OC and DC. 2 games in Carolina when Sean McDermott was in Carolina, and 2 games when Sean McVay was in Washington. Obviously, we're like 4 or 5 years removed from that. And I want to know how much of a factor does that play? Because in those games, Sean McDermott defenses really did a job on the offense that McVay was running. Obviously, it's different personnel, different things going on with 2 different teams. But one of those years in particular, Washington was the number 3 ranked offense in the NFL. Now, during these games, McVay's offense only averaged 15 points a game, 239 passing yards, 21 rushing yards a game. They were sacked 6 times, 8 turnovers, and McDermott's teams are 2-0.
Yeah, you can throw all that out the window, though. I mean, you know, all that stats and analytics. I mean, I guess if it was a bigger sample size, maybe we could look into it and it was more recent data. But like you said, it's 2 different teams, different organizations. Personnel is way different. I don't even know if Sean McVay was the coordinator in Washington. It still might have been Kyle at the time. I'm not quite sure how that transition happened, but he might have been a coordinator then. Yeah, throw it out the window. Yeah, you have tendencies, but they're not really relying on that. Maybe if it's like a certain situation and special, and he's played against them enough and knows how we attacking his defenses and that, but he's really going to rely more on what Sean has done, both Seans have done really over the last year or so, you know, as far as what they've done with the personnel and how they're using the guys currently. Because both these guys, in my mind, are innovators in the sense of we're going to put our playmakers in a position of making plays, whether that's third down for defense, how we're going to manipulate them, or Sean McVay, first, second, third down, where he's lining guys up to put them in a position to make plays. And so you really have to, first of all, use the bulk of these games that you're going to see that you just saw week 1, week 2 to see, get your tendencies and how are they coming out first 15, how are they attacking a 4-3 team. And then rely on that, and then maybe look to last year to see how they maybe attack some other 4-3 teams or some other teams that ran similar schemes as Sean ran, and vice versa. And based on that information, that's how you're gonna, you know, divvy up your game plan. Because some things you can do with your personnel that you might not be able to do a couple of years ago, and so now you maybe have a new wrinkle. Yeah, it's a good understanding. But I know Sean McDermott is not relying on his past record of success, or maybe it was some things he did in those games, because maybe he has personnel that can't do those things, or maybe he has personnel that can do different things a better way, and now he wants to attack them totally different. And so you have to kind of see how this game is going to plan out. It'd be different if they're like in our division, and then you see them every year. Then you kind of get a better understanding of tendencies and what people like to do. But, you know, once in a blue moon, and then only other time you can see them is in the playoffs, or every 4 years, really, or whenever your conference matches up
right.
here. So every 4 years. So it's hard to really get a true tale based off of what happened in prior years.
All right, and you know, you already kind of previously spoke on what the Rams like to do offensively. And I mean, they have a triple threat there, and Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and honestly, our oncoming Tyler Higbee. And actually, if you really want to, you can throw Gerald Everett's name in there as well. So they have a lot of weapons on offense. And this secondary Buffalo kind of struggled a little against Miami a little bit, I felt. So I'm looking for them to really come back. Now, on both sides of the field, you have an elite corner and 2 corners who honestly just got paid a boatload of money. Jalen Ramsey on one side and Trey White on the other. When you have somebody at your position, and these 2 guys are friends off the field, when you have an elite guy on your at your position that's across the field from you, does that get you up for the game? That get you a little amped, you know, I'm going to show out too? Nah.
Nah, maybe because they boys, but if it's like another elite, I'm not trying to outshine him. I'm trying to beat the cat in front of me. And it may have something to do more about bragging rights. If you boys in the off season, like, man, I balled out against y'all. I was killing y'all. But just because, you know, you playing another great player, I mean, it's every week there's a great player. So you have to get up for your own self, be internally motivated like both these guys are. And that extra stuff when you really have a great game is more for bragging rights. But that's extra on top of what you already want to do by just going out there and showing that you dominate regardless of who's lined up across from you.
Right. And as far as lined up across, Robert Woods, another week 1, we had Shaq Lawson come in, and he had some actually very nice things to say about Buffalo and the city of Buffalo. I'm going to ask you a question about the free agency and how those things kind of play effect possibly down the line. But this week, Robert Woods also had some nice things to say about Buffalo. He said, I love the fans. I wish they could be there this week. Just going back to that atmosphere, feeling like it's another home place for me. I grew to love Buffalo. Real, true, loyal fans. Fun place to play.
Yeah.
When players are preaching these type of sentiments about a city, even though he didn't get paid here, he went to another location. Jordan Phillips, another one who left last year, had some very nice things to say about the city. Does that breed a good reputation, especially for future free agents, maybe these guys come available again and possibly returning to the city? How's that work?
Most definitely. Most definitely. I think the winning and the culture is more significant because at the end of the day, guys want to be a part of an organization that's winning, year in and year out and give them a chance to compete for a ring. And then everything around it is just on top of it. And so if you ever come to a city that may be the same and you look up, okay, Buffalo's winning, let's say Green Bay is winning, I want to go to Buffalo, man. They say Buffalo is really nice, man. It's actually getting underplayed a little bit as far as, the downtown area, the theater district, all the food and restaurants, very close to proximity to Toronto. The fan base is second to none as far as the way they support you on and off the field, very involved in the community. They help guys, they love guys, Bills Mafia. I mean, they got a 30 for 30 with other, so all that stuff is on top of the winning. That and the culture that has been created by the organization, and I think was really embodied by the fan base. And now the team is finally caught up to what the fan base has always been about. And so it's great to see, it's great to hear that even because Robert Woods, when we played together, we weren't very good. We were very average. Had a chance to go to playoffs but couldn't do it. And for him to say it in an organization that wasn't winning at the time, just shows you how much the fan base means to players and what they and how they support guys. And Robert was one of the guys that was out and about. He had a TV show when he was there. People would come out, do autographs, and all those type of things. So he really embraced the city as well. And so when you can have a reciprocal relationship like that, it only makes it better to tell guys, hey, man, you can go up to Buffalo, man. It's legit, bro. And that may put a guy over the hump, and especially these last couple of years, I've had those conversations when I was still part of the organization. Getting guys, hey man, come up here, bro. I was the same way. I didn't know much about it, but it is legit. You'll love it. The worst thing I can say is that it gets extremely cold in the winter. But as far as the fan base of football and it being a NFL football city, I've never been in any better organization when it comes to all of that.
Right. Robert was. I thought he was the toughest nails player. Yeah. He embodied everything that the Bills fans and Bills Mafia go for. Just a tough, hard-nosed player does. There was anything on the field that he couldn't do or wouldn't do. And for that reason, we definitely have to key in on him on Sunday. So what are you looking for the Bills to do to kind of slow Robert Woods down? Because since he's went to Los Angeles, he's turned into almost the number one receiver.
Yeah, I mean, he's nice. He's all over the place. Like you said, he does anything. A lot of times he's even coming around the corner, laying blocks on people. And so he's putting himself, out there and being a real football player all the way around. And so for those type of guys, you don't want them to feel like they are starting to impose themselves, because even if he's not maybe catching balls, if he gets a couple of good blocks and that juices him up, that can make him come alive. And so you really have to be physical with a guy like that wants to be physical. Keep him off balance, not let him get into his route smoothly. And so I don't know if he garners, to have like special attention, like whether or not Trey will follow him all game, but they'll definitely be aware of where he lines up. And based on where he lines up, the tendencies they have, the routes they like to run, and really key on when he is a target based on if he's lined up at number 1, 2, or 3, if he's jet motioning across. And so you have to just keep your antennas up where a guy like that is lining up, because a lot of times, be a great indicator of what's about to come and how they're about to attack.
Right. Again, before we get to your keys to the game that we do every week, we'll take a couple of fan questions here and think they got to ask you. Amy Gibbons asks, anybody, I'm assuming she's saying anybody has breakout game potential for?
Breakout game potential. I'm still waiting for this D-line to really turn it up. Obviously they got a lot of great guys along that front, and this is a great week to hopefully put these guys in some third and longer situations and just have some great success up front, which I think they can do after watching them on film. And so just continue to have those guys come alive as the season develops. Jerry, Mario, Trent, Ed, just to continue to apply the pressure. Quentin Jefferson, I really like what I see out of him. Really just turn it on and really make Jared just feel uncomfortable. So he has a couple of those throws that are flying high, and we get our hands on them. I know Mike and Jordan are waiting to get some picks. Levi, all those guys, some LBs. Just need to create some more turnovers, and I think that's going to be led by the defensive line this week.
I'm gonna go Ed Oliver. Ed looked a little bit more comfortable. I know during camp he came in, he battled, I think it was either a knee or a hammy injury a little bit, but he seemed a lot faster last week, and he was actually moving around a little bit better. I'm gonna go with Ed Oliver this week. I think Ed gets 1.5 sacks.
1.5. Okay, that's a good number.
1.5. Yeah. Ishmael Valentine says, "Are you worried about Allen getting hurt running?" Valid question.
Yeah, I mean, it always bothers me, but it's one of those things you're like, no, yes, type of thing. For me, I just always want to make sure that he's protecting himself and not trying to be Superman every play. So I'm worried based on how he does it, versus a guy like a Kyler Murray, for example, that will run and then slide and get down. Saw Josh do that a couple of times last week where he was running and decided, okay, I got enough. Let me slide and get down. And so I would like for him to do that a couple more times a game. But, sometimes, you don't want to hamper a guy or bundle him up. But do I worry about it? Yeah, just because I just know how fast it only takes one. And you want to minimize, especially that guy, your quarterback, from being exposed too often.
And we'll take one more question here, and then we'll get ready for your 3 keys to the game. Let's see. Brandon Bell. Brandon asks, how does our line and their excellent rotation have to deal with the Rams D-line? I think you asked this earlier, but we answered again.
Yeah. I mean, I really think our interior line is playing well as Dion and the tackles. They really look really good. I mean, I think a lot of that is off of the run game and play action, but they're playing physical up top. They're just going to have to sustain in pass pro a little, sometimes maybe a little longer in the down after they've kind of started that initial burst or attack. They've fallen off a couple of blocks, but if they can maintain that and grow from that from week 2, especially getting up for Aaron Donald, because that's what everybody's worried about is Aaron Donald, and so on, keeping him off basis and really taking the fight to him. I think our offensive line, the way they're built and knowing those guys, especially Cody and Spain, their mentality, they're going to be up for this game and ready to go. And they're not going to back down because Aaron Donald is standing across from them. They're actually going to compete with this guy and try to impose their will on him. And does that mean Aaron Donald won't make any plays? No, he is a defensive MVP. But I think they'll be able to not allow him to wreck the game.
Right. Now, coming off your answer about Aaron Donald, the Bills have a very good D-line themselves and a lot of good bodies on that D-line. Now, this offensive line has been going against that D-line in practice since training camp began. How much does that help you going against an Ed Oliver each day, going against a Trent Murphy, a Jerry Hughes, prepare for a game like this?
I mean, it helps you, but pass rush in it's not realistic. I mean, it helps you, but it's not as realistic because it's some O-lines that I've gone against that had really good defensive linemen, like let's just say the Rams, for example. They go against Aaron Donald every day, right? But on film, you see them getting beat, their interior line getting beat by guys that are not as good as Aaron Donald. So it helps you as far as competing and maybe working on your technique, but it can also, if you get beat every day in one-on-one pass rush by the guy, it may throw your technique in and mess your confidence up too. So it's kind of a slippery slope depending on if it helps you or not.
Good point. I never even thought about it like that. Like he could mess up your confidence. I had never thought about that.
Man, this dude is killing me in practice. Man, what is wrong? You start overthinking, overcorrecting, especially if you're a younger guy. It can mess you up a little bit. I know, especially for me, I know it always, if I had, we practice normally you go against the practice squad players or whatnot. And if a guy hit me up, I'm like, ooh, man, I don't feel that good this week. But you went out there knocking hands off, beating guys in one-on-one or in team, and you get into the quarterback, that garners a different type of confidence that you have going into that game. Like, okay, my plan is right. My rush moves, I feel good. I look good, so I'm about to go out here and play good, But if you go in there kind of, man, this dude was this backup dude that ain't even on the roster was blocking me all week. Oh, I don't know. So it does play, I think, to some guys' psyche a little bit. I know it's something I always had to be conscious over to make sure, okay, I want to have a good day today. I want to have some confidence going into the week. So let me make sure that I'm on point with my technique and get to the quarterback.
Well, as a whole, this Buffalo Bill team so far has seemed pretty confident this season, pretty confident in their abilities, and pretty confident what they're going to do and what they can do. So with that, Zoe, it's that time. We need your 3 keys to the game for the Bills to horn the Rams, I guess we'll call it this week.
Yeah, so the number one thing is obviously Aaron Donald. You can't allow this guy to wreck your game plan, to impose his will on you, and just not allow you to really Josh to be able to do anything back there because he's so disruptive, or the running game because he's so disruptive. And so you really have to double him, maybe run some quick passes, get him running to the ball a little bit, make him go lateral, just do things that's going to kind of throw him off. And obviously don't want to pay so much attention to him because I do believe in Cody and Spain, but the guy is legit. So we have to make sure that we contain him and let other guys be forced to beat you, and not Aaron Donald, because once he's going, everybody else gets better. The same thing with Jalen Ramsey. Once he gets going, everybody gets better because those guys play, especially Jalen, plays with a chip on his shoulder and emotion. And so once he starts feeling himself, it's really hard to move past or to get over that or beat them, because not only the great players, once the confidence is rolling, it's even more so. They become more elite. Number 2, I would say is because you're playing a better team, a better offense, that the opportunities that we see offensively, and I would say even defensively. So offensively, when you have those chunk plays, when you have a guy open and you can have a 30-yard pass, it has to be an execution. It can't be an overthrow. It can't be a drop. You have to execute and take advantage of those opportunities, because when you're playing a good team, the margin of error shrinks significantly. And the same thing with the defense, which I think they need to improve on, is if somebody throws you the ball, you got to take it away. You got to intercept it. That's something that the defense prides themselves on, and it's about that time that some turnovers start happening, some interceptions, some punch outs. Got to get that going and take the ball away from an explosive offense that can, score a ton of points. But getting the ball back to Josh as much as we can. And then lastly, I'm going to stick with the defense, and that is to win on first and second down and put these guys behind the sticks, third and long, to really throw off of their balance. Not allow this team to be able to run the ball at will. So you have to stop this zone scheme, put them behind the ball so they can't be running the same play on 3rd and 3 that looks like, oh man, this is the run they just ran on first down. Oh no, it's not. It's a boot. Here comes Robert Woods or one of their other weapons running a deep over. And now not only do they pick up a 3rd down, but now they get some yak, or maybe it's a big explosion play. And so you limit those type of plays and runs by knocking it out on 1st and 2nd down and put them in a distance on 3rd down that play. Like, you're not going to run the ball on 3rd and 8 and run a zone boot on 3rd and 8. You're just not going to do it. And so it takes a lot of their game plan away that makes them a really efficient offense.
So, as I say, Zoe knows, right? So you've been right on point for week 1, week 2, what they need to do, and they won both games, but there were certain things that were in your keys that they didn't capitalize, and it made that Miami game a little bit close. But 2 fast starts, week 1 and week 2, so definitely got to come out and get another fast start here in week 3. Keep the offense going, like you said, and execute, I guess. And hopefully we come out of this game healthy, because last week, 7 torn ACLs in the NFL. Very, very scary situation here with limited practice time. But hey, guys, this was another episode of the Pressure Front Podcast. Lorenzo Alexander. Zoe, anything going on with any of your charities this week? Anytime soon?
Yeah, just still in the game playing stages with Victory Sports. We're going to be coming out with our literacy initiative, providing books and incentive program to encourage people to read more and just get their reading level up to a significant level that helps them out and their families out in so many different ways.
Guys, get over to Lorenzo, www.lorenzoalexander.org. Check out everything he's got going on. Donate, get involved, help his causes. Keep in tune, because like I said, once this COVID over, Zoe's going to be on the road doing a lot of stuff with his charity. Yeah,
most definitely. And then one other thing, obviously, the opportunity to register to vote is coming up, making sure that you register to vote. I know here in Phoenix is October 5th. I don't know what it is in New York, but figure that out. I mean, if you haven't registered. And then once you register, because that's the minimum, You need to educate yourself on who you're voting for, Republican or Democrat. I really don't care, but at least I think we get caught up in knowing what we stand against, but not knowing what we stand for. So whoever you're voting for, have some knowledge about what they've done and what they plan to do so you can hold them accountable. And then once you've educated yourself, show up and vote. That simple, that easy.
That's it. That simple, that easy. Hey, guys, once again, thank you to my co-host, Lorenzo Alexander. Another great show, Zoe. Hey, a couple announcements from us. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at PressureFront57. That's at PressureFront57. We got a nice giveaway coming, so you ain't going to miss that. And also, this is also going to be live on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts, whatever podcast platform you listen to. This is also going to be live, so you can listen to us at the gym, at work, at school. You shouldn't be doing it at school. I know y'all are at homeschool right now, but hey, it's going to be live on that too. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks to my co-host Zoe. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, hopefully 3-0. Catch you guys later. Have a good night.
Right.